Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another book review. And how well do we really understand the people closest to us? And how much of what we believe about others and even ourselves is shaped by what's left unsaid? So, today I'm exploring these questions through the work of one of Korea's most acclaimed writers, Kim Yeon-su, whose fiction is deeply concerned with communication, memory, and the human search for meaning. So I'll begin with his short story, Happy New Year to Everyone, Raymond Carver. A very a subtle and thought-provoking portrait of a couple, a migrant worker, and the misunderstandings that can shape relationships. Then I will turn to A Future as Ordinary as This, which is a more philosophical meditation on time, regret, and the lessons that we can learn from the past. So we'll start with Happy New Year to everyone, to Raymond Carver. Korean title is 모두에게 복된 새해, and it's by Kim Yeon-su. It doesn't mention Raymond Carver in the Korean title. Maybe I took that down wrong. So yeah, Kim Yeon-su, initially published in Korean in 2007. The English translation was published in 2014 as part of the fantastic Asia Publishers Modern Korean Literature Collection, which obviously I've reviewed a lot of translations from. And I've just realized I didn't take a note of the take a note of the translator. So just wait 1 second and let me find. Why didn't I write the translator down? And it doesn't have a note of it here either. Dum dum dum. I'm so sorry. One second. 1 second. Where did I? Happy New Year. Oh, Maya West. Apologies, Maya West. Okay, so the translator is Maya West, and it was published in 2007 in Korean, and Maya West English translation was published in 2014. So Kim is an extremely highly acclaimed writer here in Korea. It doesn't have a huge amount available in English, but he does have a very long list of accolades in Korea, including the 1994 Writers' World Prize for Literature, the 2001 Dongso Literature Prize, and the 2003 Dongin Literature Prize. And it's interesting that this particular story didn't win any awards, but it was a runner up in three literary awards the year following its publication. So it was sort of in contention for a lot of awards. Anyway, Kim is a multi-talented writer, and he works as a poet, as a translator, as a novelist, and also as a music critic. And he's well known for his love of Korean writer Lee Sang and Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges. And his work is often interested in the nature of communication. And in the past, he said that the reason why I write is to find out whether the truth does indeed exist in the act of writing. And today's this first story that we're looking at finds him searching for truth and exploring whether communication between individuals is genuinely possible at all. So the story is called Happy New Year to Everyone, to Raymond Carver. How does it connect to New Year celebrations? What's this story about? So the story is set on New Year's Eve in Seoul. It's told from the point of view of an unnamed Korean man. The man's wife, who's not present, has arranged for her conversation partner to come to their house and fix the couple's piano. Her conversation partner is an Indian man who works in a factory and to whom she teaches Korean. So the story begins with the Korean husband answering the door and welcoming the Indian piano tuner and factory worker into his house, where they then struggle to communicate with one another. And as they struggle to connect, the narrator is inspired to reflect on his relationship with his wife. And at the same time, the narrator is also concerned, or at least curious, about the nature of his wife's relationship with the Indian man. And ultimately, some truths will be revealed, and the narrator will come to a new understanding of his marriage. And through this, Kim explores the act of communication. So, how does Kim explore communication through this meeting between a Korean and an Indian? What types of problems do they encounter? Sorry, excuse me. So the story is about the nature of communication. How do we communicate with one another? What is successful communication? The Korean narrator is initially surprised that his wife has befriended this migrant worker student that she teaches, and he's bewildered about the nature of this relationship and perhaps even suspects she's having an affair because, in his mind, what else could it be? He this is a little quote from the story. He could not believe that it was even possible for his wife and a migrant worker who came from a foreign country for money to be able to become friends. The narrator's wife and her Indian student have started a language exchange with one another. He speaks to her in Korean, which he isn't good at, and she speaks to him in English, which she isn't good at. And as such, they are forced to have very simple conversations. So, how does the narrator feel about this relationship between his wife and her student? So, the narrator is relieved. What type of deep relationship could form from such simple communication? However, as the narrator and his wife's student spend the evening together, it turns out that the student knows some surprisingly deep and personal things about his wife that he wasn't aware of. And this forces the man to reevaluate the nature of his marriage and hints that perhaps as the new year dawns, things will change. Through this, Kim suggests there are different roles and opportunities available to us through communication. This is also an immigrant story. So, in the past, I've reviewed several stories about immigrant experiences in Korea. One that springs to mind is Elephant by Kim Yeon-su. That story was also about migrant factory workers. How does Kim Yeon-su depict that experience in today's story? So, this aspect of the story is also tied to the significance of communication and the challenges it presents. So, literary critic Lee Kyung-jae writes in an essay titled Time to Learn Foreign Languages that no other contemporary Korean writer features foreign countries and people as often as Kim Yeon-su. This has something to do with Kim's intense interest in the ethics of understanding and communication, a very difficult philosophical issue. And this is certainly something we can see in the story. The Indian man experiences prejudice, discrimination, and abuse from the Koreans he meets around him to such an extent that he has stopped wearing his turban daily. He says in his learner's Korean, I cannot wear turban every day. Korean people don't like. From factory, I must ride 1 hour on bus. Say Al Qaeda. They're sons of bitches on bus, you know. Today's holiday, I will wear turban. So he too suffers from this a kind of dysfunctional form of communication that's directed at him. And as we look into the future, we can see obviously like Korea and the world face many significant problems, perhaps problems that will require us to communicate with one another and between cultures effectively. So, in the story's conclusion, is Kim positive or optimistic about our ability to communicate successfully with one another? So, there are some positive things to take from the story. Most of us know that we have flawed interactions with the people around us. And sometimes we perhaps don't understand that what someone is trying to say, or we might make hurtful comments or fail to appreciate the place that others are coming from. But I'm not sure how optimistic Kim is at the story's conclusion. The story ends on a note of ambiguity, saying perhaps it's up to us. At the end of the story, the man listens to his Indian visitor singing in a language he can't understand, with the discordant piano in the background, and behind that, the sound of cars outside. And he says, somewhere in there, just like that, 1 year passes into the next. It seems I have no choice. I'm going to have to think about it. So, if Happy New Year to everyone to Raymond Carver challenges us to think about the spaces between people, the misunderstandings, the silences, tentative attempts at connection, then this next story, A Future as Ordinary as This, invites us to look inward at the spaces within ourselves. So, where the first story wrestles with the complexities of communication in the present moment, a second story turns its gaze to the past and future, asking how our understanding of time shapes who we are and how we live. So this story is A Future as Ordinary as This, 이토록 평범한 미래, translated by Sean Lynn Halbert and published in the spring 2023 edition of the Korean Literature Now magazine. And Kim Yeon-su was the featured writer in that issue of Korean Literature Now, and which is, of course, published by the Literature Translation Institute of Korea. And there, as well as this translation of A Future as Ordinary as This, there was an article about Kim's career and a very interesting interview with the man himself. And you can find all of these things and much more on the Korean Literature Now website. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, Kim has been around for quite a while. He debuted well over 2 decades ago, maybe even like two and a half decades ago, I guess, almost. And he's been a prolific and acclaimed and best-selling author ever since. He's written novels, short stories, essays, and poetry, and is also highly regarded as a translator of international fiction into Korean. And like I said, he's won lots of awards. And this story was the title story of a collection published in Korea in 2023. So the whole collection hasn't been translated into English, but the Korean version was voted Book of the Year in a survey of 50 Korean authors. So Kim is very popular with his contemporaries and with the other writers here in Korea. And this, whereas the previous story ends on a kind of note of ambiguity, this story is more optimistic, more inspiring. And like I said, it's about the nature of time and our complicated relationship with it. And but like the previous story, that story is about concerned with time passing and how it affects the way people communicate with each other. So how does Kim approach the subject of time in this story? So this is actually quite a tricky story to summarize. So it's narrated from the perspective of a middle-aged man in the present day, looking back at his younger self in the summer of 1999. At this time, he was an undergraduate and he was in a relationship with a young woman called Jimin. And he writes that I would come to remember that summer as a summer a spirit answered my life's deepest questions, as the summer that sparked a long and beautiful relationship with a girl. The girl is Jimin. Jimin's mother wrote a controversial book called Ash and Dust when she was younger. And this book was banned by the Park Chung-hee administration. Jimin's mother killed herself shortly after the book was banned, and Jimin has never been able to find a copy to read. So they go to the narrator's bookworm uncle, who runs a secondhand bookstore, to see if he can help track a copy of the elusive book down. The uncle doesn't have the book, but he can remember the basic story, and he tells the story to his nephew and Jimin. Skip ahead 20 years to 2019, when the narrator is working as a journalist, when he comes across someone else who has been significantly influenced by this book, Ash and Dust. This person is a successful investment banker who quit the industry and went to the mountain to gain enlightenment. And this former banker is also an avid fan of Ash and Dust. And so, does this book have the ability to teach people the meaning of life? So, very intriguing premise. We have a banned book that might hold the meaning of life. So, what is the story contained in the book, and what insights does it offer about enlightenment and living well? So, it's actually quite complicated. So, this is quite an intricate little story. There's actually two important stories contained within this story. There's the plot of the book Ash and Dust, and there's the life story of the investment banker turned enlightenment seeker. And both of these stories are related to the reader. The plot of Ash and Dust is about two young lovers who, like in the story The Curious Case of Benjamin Button by F. Scott Fitzgerald, start to live their lives in reverse. One day they realize that their romance is over, but then the next day they start going backward through time, and it's as if they are reliving the romantic highs of their relationship, getting more and more sort of lovey-dovey and romantic as they move back in time. Let me share a little quote. They couldn't believe it. They had been so surprised, thrilled, and excited to meet. As soon as they realized this, the two of them looked at each other as though they were meeting for the first time all over again. And then time started to flow in its original direction, and then their third life began. So this is the story that inspires the former investment banker, Kim Won, to change his life. why. So throughout his life, Kim had loved gambling, but even though he thought he had a great system, he often lost. And one day, he lost everything. And through reading Ash and Dust, he realizes that the past doesn't determine the present, the future determines the present. And this ultimately leads to him changing his life. So it might sound like there are a lot of heady and complex ideas in the story. What are we to make of all this philosophizing, and how successful is the story? So it's a fascinating story. It's textured and layered and full of sort of Buddhist inspired wisdom that is framed quite beautifully. There are many other aspects that I haven't really mentioned in this summary and review, but this is a story full of wisdom. We can learn and take a lot from Kim Yeon-su's writing here. I thought it was a fantastic story. At one point, the former investment banker writes, "People say life is a sea of hardship, but the essence of our existence is happiness. Life is, in fact, a sea of happiness. But waves emerge on the sea to hide its true appearance. Waves may originate from the sea, but they are not the sea itself, and they eventually hide its true nature," right? So this is the "you are not your thoughts" sort of Buddhist inspired message. And it's an idea that the story encapsulates very well. So a lot of us, I know I am, are very prone to rumination about the past, excessive rumination, and anxiety about the future. But these feelings are not real, the story says. It's the present moment alone that is real. And it's a powerful and captivating story, and one that I think rewards multiple readings. So, across these two stories, and I'm sad that these are the only two stories that I think Kim Yeon-su has available in English. If anyone knows of more, please let me know. But in these two stories, Kim challenges us to think more deeply about how we live, how we speak, how we listen, how we carry the past, how we shape our futures. And his fiction here reminds us that understanding is rarely simple, but always worth striving for. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up there. But if know anything about Kim Yeon-su, if you've read these stories, please leave a comment with your interpretation, and please subscribe and all that stuff if you want more reviews. So take care, and I'll see you in the next review.